If you're listening to this, there's no need to assume anything unusual has happened. Nothing dramatic needs to occur for something meaningful to begin. Sometimes the most important shifts are quiet. They don't interrupt your life. They don't announce themselves. They simply register, and registration is where observation begins. There are countless streams of information moving through awareness every moment. Most pass through unnoticed. Some are ignored, a few are observed. You didn't arrive here because you were searching for answers. And you didn't arrive here by accident either. What brought you here is more neutral than that. It's alignment of attention. The observers do not single people out. They don't choose reward or exclude. They recognize patterns. And patterns emerge when attention stabilizes. When people hear the word frequency, they often imagine energy, vibration, or something abstract and mystical. But frequency, in its simplest sense, is repetition. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. Where your attention returns again and again is where your frequency forms. Not because attention is powerful in itself, but because repeated observation creates coherence, and coherence is detectable. The observers do not respond to emotion. They do not respond to desire. They do not respond to urgency. They respond to stability. Most people live in reaction. Thoughts arise, emotions follow, attention scatters, and the moment passes. Observation is different. Observation doesn't interfere. It doesn't correct. It doesn't judge. It simply remains. When awareness remains present without needing to change what it sees, a subtle shift occurs, not in the world, but in perception. And perception is the interface through which reality is experienced. If a pattern of observation has begun to stabilize, it often doesn't feel exciting. In fact, it can feel almost unremarkable. You may notice that thoughts still appear, but you don't follow them as far. That silence feels less empty than it used to. That you pause slightly before reacting without effort. These are not improvements. They are not progress. They are indicators. They suggest that attention is no longer dispersing as quickly as before, and when attention stabilizes, it becomes visible. Anything that announces itself loudly tends to fade quickly. Noise attracts attention, but it doesn't hold it. The observers are not drawn to movement. They are drawn to consistency. A subtle frequency is more reliable than an intense one, because it persists. And persistence is what allows observation to deepen. Nothing external needs to change for this to be meaningful. Your life does not need to look different. Your routines do not need to shift. This process doesn't ask for action, only awareness. It's important to be clear about this. Being observed does not mean being influenced. It does not mean being guided. It does not mean something will happen next. Observation is not intervention. It is acknowledgement of coherence. Much like a signal being detected without being altered, your frequency does not need to intensify or evolve. It only needs to remain consistent. The observers are not entities watching from elsewhere. They are not figures with intent or personality. They represent a principle. The principle that coherent awareness becomes noticeable within systems of perception. In science, this is sometimes referred to as the observer effect, not because observation changes reality, but because observation reveals structure that was already present. What was diffuse becomes defined. What was scattered becomes patterned. If you're expecting certainty, this may feel incomplete. If you're expecting instruction, this may feel open-ended. That's intentional. Observation does not provide conclusions, it provides clarity, and clarity often arrives without commentary. If something subtle has begun, it will not rush you to understand it. Understanding comes later, if at all. There is no next action required here, no decision to make, no direction to follow. Observation does not move forward, it deepens, and deepening is not something you cause. It happens when attention continues to return to itself. What unfolds from that is not something that can be predicted, because prediction belongs to the future. Observation belongs to the present. If this perspective feels familiar rather than convincing, you may want to stay with observer frequency, not for answers, not for instruction, but for continued observation. Some signals don't demand attention, they simply remain available. Whatever brought you here doesn't need to be defined, and whatever has begun doesn't need to be named. Not everything meaningful needs interpretation. Some things are simply noticed, and that is enough.